Lynn Loudermilk here, the practicing crafter, and today we are going to make a mobile to hang outside, a fall themed mobile to hang outside. And I am going to get started by using some things out of my pantry. I have got 3 cans here that I'm working with, and we want to make sure that these cans will stack within each other. So that's your first thing. Find 3 cans in your pantry that will stack. This one does not have to be longer than the one that's going to precede it, just as long as they will fit inside one another. Next, you want to make sure that you clean your cans really well. You can see these have got some dents and scratches on them and things like that, but that is fine. Does not bother me. If that bothers you, make sure that your cans are perfect. So the other thing is you are going to need to remove whatever is around those cans. And to get a lot of that sticky area off, I just use a hair dryer and warm that spot and try to remove that the best I can. Again, if there's a little residue left, it does not bother me, but if that bothers you, then get in there with some Goo Gone and really make sure that you get that off there. So I've got my 3 cans. The other thing that you want to do is you want to put a hole in your cans. So these 3 cans, this one's still wet. I drilled a hole. We have a drill, and I just drilled a hole in the top, a hole big enough to put a string through and be able to tie it off to where it will support that can. If you don't have a drill, you should be able to do this with maybe a nail and a hammer and just get a hole in the base of that. One more thing and we will get started. What is it? What is the other thing? Just to make sure you're set up for success for this project. We cleaned them, we drilled a hole. Oh, the only other thing I was going to say, if you don't have a drill or you don't have a hammer and a nail, maybe you don't have those things, you probably have a friend that could do that for you. So ask your friend if you don't have that kind of equipment. Anyway, the next thing that I need to do, because I just noticed one of my cans is still wet, so I really need to just make sure that's nice and dry. I'm going to make sure that's good and dry. We'll set this back to do that one last. This one is still a little damp on the inside. I'm not painting the inside, but I don't want that to be a problem. There we go. All right, so everything's good and dry. The next thing I'm going to do is I am taking some white paint. I'm using Apple Barrel Matte White. I was just looking for a white paint to use. Any of your acrylic paints would probably work. I have folk art, chalk paint, that would probably work fine. Multi-surface paint would be great. But just grab a white paint, because what that is going to do is we're going to paint these cans, but this paint acts like a primer in that when we use our napkins, when we add our napkins on, the color will still be pure versus putting it straight onto this gray can. It would just mute the colors of whatever you're adding to it, and we don't want that to happen. So I am using a white or an off-white paint. Some type of acrylic paint should work, whatever you happen to have in your stash. And we're just going to start by getting all of the cans painted. So we have just a coat of white paint on our cans, and it doesn't have to be perfect. So I just put on one coat of paint, And I'm going to set all of these to the side to let those dry really well. I was looking for something to go over the top of my cans for this mobile to hang from. And I found this at the thrift store. Obviously, it is just a lid for a pot. And it does have a hole in it. I cleaned it up, so it is ready to go. And we are just going to take this apart. I just have to unscrew this lid. And let's take all these pieces apart. I am just going to wipe down where that lid was on there real quick. Now, just to show you, a lot of what I'm working with has sunflowers and black-eyed Susan. So I thought it would be fun to paint this as a sunflower. And this is actually going to be the top. So I'm going to paint it from the bottom just to give it the paint a little bit more protection, which means that I am going to have to paint in reverse order. So, you know, if you're painting on paper, you layer and layer as you go up. But if you're painting on glass that is going to be turned back over, you have to start with what would normally be the last layer of your painting. I will be listing all of the paint colors in the description, so if you want a particular paint color, you should be able to find that. I'm just going to get a little of that iced coffee, and I'm actually going to mix that with just some medium yellow. And we are going to just make us a little outline of a sunflower. Just going to start coming in from the corner and going down here to make my leaves. And this is just a very rustic project. I'm just trying to get a fun little design laid down here to use. All right, so let's look. Kind of cool, right? For getting started. So now I am going to lay this to the side and let this dry. Next, for this particular project, I picked 3 napkins that I had in my stash that I just thought the colors were complementary. These are 2-ply napkins and some are 3-ply. One thing I need to do is remove the plies from these napkins. We want to get to where we just have 1 ply in there. Sometimes this is a little complicated to do. People have little tricks. I will just put a little rip in the napkin, and that will usually expose the layers. And then you can just remove that ply. Now, if you have purchased your napkins, it should tell you whether they are 2-ply or 3-ply. Higher quality napkins tend to be 3-ply. This one that I'm working on, it is from, I'm pretty sure this napkin came from the Dollar Tree. And it is just a single-ply napkin, or a 2-ply napkin, excuse me, 1 additional ply. They are pretty easy to pull apart, but just be gentle so that you don't rip your napkin. If you do anything with projects that you use tissue paper, save those plies of tissue paper to use for another project. And that could be other decoupage projects. Maybe you want to run this through a printer. You have an inkjet and you want to print something on this to use for another day. You could use these on your jelly plate. They're really fun to use on your jelly plate to cover something or to add additional texture. So keep those plies handy. I like this napkin. I picked this up at a thrift store. So let's see if we can get down to that third. Yep, there it is. So that one had 3 plies. Oops, I ripped that. That's okay. If you rip it a little bit on the edge, most of the time for these projects, it is absolutely fine. Just be careful as you are pulling the rest of it away. All right, now I am just going to start decoupaging these napkins onto each of these cans. And before I got started, I just went ahead and pulled the sections from the napkins that I wanted. I am using Mod Podge dishwasher safe. You could probably use just about any formula that you prefer. I am out of town and this just happens to be the only one that I have with me. So I am using that one for today's project. When you are working with this product, just always remember 1 to 2 hours between coats to dry. You want to add 2 to 3 coats depending on your projects. And for it to fully cure to a dishwasher safe, which we will not be using it for that, but if you want to fully cure, 28 days before you can put it in a dishwasher. I'm just going to start by adding a spot where I can just get this on here. All right, and you know what? There's one more thing I should have done, which I'm going to do as soon as I get this one placed. I will just use my fingers to get this in these little grooves on this can. Be gentle. It is a napkin after all. And once you add any type of glue or liquid to these napkins, they become so delicate. All right, what I did forget to do was to have a way to stabilize this can. I had bought a bag of beans years ago. I've had these forever, and this is what I will use to help keep this can in place as I work on it. That is a trick that I learned from Kathy Fillion, and I have used it forever. I want it to be that thick. Thin that up a little bit. Okay. Keep that coming around. Just use our fingers to work with that napkin. I can go pretty much all the way around this can with half of that napkin. So I went ahead and cut that down. I'm going to add that, place that to the side to use for another day. We are going to do this just a section at a time. And this time, since I'm using my full napkin, I am going to start a little bit. I'm going to leave a little bit of the edge and I'm going to lay that down and just start adding one of those sections, leaving some of this still available to add a nice finishing edge as we get around, as we work our way around. You may get some little wrinkles in your napkin as you are working through it. I usually just try to do my best to keep those wrinkles at bay, and then I just don't worry about them anymore. If there's a little wrinkle in the tissue as I'm working on it, I really just don't worry about it all that much. Get rid of that seam in my napkin. You can see it a little bit right now, but we are going to do our best just to work that seam out of there so that it's not so noticeable when the project's complete. Number 2, we're going to set that to the side to dry. Let's see, I went ahead and split the napkin in half once again. And let's take a look at how this is going to fit around this one. Let's just get started with the spot. I have all 3 of these, and I am going to leave these to dry for at least an hour, and then we will take a look at next steps with these guys. While we're waiting for our cans to dry a little bit, I am just going to work on my sunflower. Just adding a little bit of outlining. So as we continue to add depth to our sunflower, we are going to set that to the side. Continue to let that dry. Let's just bring our cans back out here. They have been drying for just a little while now, but the thing I'm going to do, I am going to just go ahead and remove this extra tissue by just using a little delicate touch with an emery board or sandpaper, whatever you happen to have. I just find that emery boards work so well on these little projects like this. All right, so we had to pause to clean up our mess because that's how we operate. I'm not going to bore you with this, but I will be adding a second and third coat of Mod Podge to these cans. And then we will proceed from there. I am just adding a little more shadowing to our sunflower before I add another layer of petals. Set this to the side and let it dry. I am just going to go back and fill in an additional layer of petals for this sunflower or black-eyed Susan. I did finish my sunflower, and in the blank spaces just added some green to fill that in. And now I'm looking at the lid and the colors that I'm using on the cans, and I really think that gold would be better. So I have taped this off, and I am just going to paint the rim gold, and then I will go in and paint all of this gold just to cover all of that. Let's see, am I going to be able to just use this out of the bottle, or am I going to need to put some of this on a plate? I'll put some of this on a plate. All right. And let's get to painting. This is probably going to take a couple of coats. The first coat will act probably somewhat like a primer. And then the second coat should take much better. I have painted the inside of my lid and the outside that gold color. But now I need to work on the middle of my sunflower. So I'm just grabbing a few colors. I don't need much, just a little bit. So this is the one that we're working on in the video. I'm actually doing 2 at the same time, but I'm only recording one of these. So I am still going to go ahead and work on both of these because it's such a small part of this, and I hate to waste any paint. I'm going to work on just mixing a little something for the outer rim. I'm just mixing a little red and black, and I am just dotting this on here for now. So for the outer part of this piece, I'm just going to dot on some yellow. Now, I don't know about you, but fall is my favorite time of year. I just love fall. I love the leaves changing and I don't know, just the crisp air, those types of things. What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite time of year? Love to hear that in the comments if you do. I am a firm believer that when you're working on different projects, that the devil is in the details. Even if it's a rustic type project like this one, you still want to add, I don't know, just elements of interest that catch people's eye whenever they see something like this in your garden or whatever the case may be. I've taken that gold paint, thinned it out with some water, and adding it onto these cans, and then I'm just taking a paintbrush, adding a thin coat onto each of these cans, and then just dabbing it away with a rag. All right, let's set this one back there to dry. We have our main components. And I will say that even though I'm probably not going to have these hanging outside, more than likely they will be hanging on a covered porch or something like that. But I did go ahead and add a clear indoor-outdoor top coat to these just to help them with more weather type situations. So that being said, these all have a coat of paint on them. And we are ready to assemble. Got this, it's going to be part of that. Make the top of my sunflower. And then I have the 3 cans that we are going to put together to make our mobile. So the first thing I am going to do is I am going to pull off, maybe about 3 feet of cording. Now this is a jute cording. It is not, it's kind of weather resistant maybe, but it will rot over time. For my purposes, that's probably okay. If you really want this to be weatherproof, you want to find some type of synthetic cording that can withstand the elements. All right. I did grab some beads also. And these beads I am basically using for spacers. All right. I am going to leave some cording here at the top. And I'm just going to knot that off just to have a stopping point so that my can doesn't come through there as I'm working on this project. I'm just going to put 3 little knots in there, and that's just based on the size of the hole that I drilled. Now, the way that I like to do this, you can do this several ways. The reason I use beads is it helps me figure my spacing between the cans. You could just knot these off, eyeball it, and put a knot as you string on the next can. But for me, this is just an easier way to handle this. I am going to string 2 beads between this first and second can. I'm going to go ahead and string it this next one. And you can see that is providing a stopping point for my cans. All right, now this can is a little taller, so I could do 2 like I did on this one, or I am going to do 3 beads to get this one into place, just because this one is a little taller and I want this one to hang down just a little bit more. I'm going to try to put my glue gun down in there and just get some glue in that bead just to help hold it. Do this last one. So I am going to pull out my beading needle. If you don't have a beading needle such as this, you can always just tape the end. If it's synthetic, you could just burn the end a little bit just to make it easier to string. But now you can see that's how close each of these is going to be, and that is just total personal preference. To tie a knot. All right, and then I think it's fun just to add almost like a bell element. I have these 2 different beads. They're not going to be seen. Let me just tie a knot in here because I don't want it to go beyond a certain point. I'm just going to put a stopping knot right there. And I think I'm just going to use this guy, if we can get it in there. Here we go. All right. Tie that one off. You could actually just be finished right there if you wanted to. But I do like to add a little weight at the bottom, a little more weight, just so that it hangs more evenly. So for this guy, I've grabbed a few things. This is actually for the top. You know, I've got maybe this that I could hang something from. You could hang something as simple as wood, maybe some buttons, a piece of jewelry, different things. I've got these paper clips and I think they're really cute. So I'm going to use that as part of this. So then I have these. I pulled a few different things. I've got this old key. I've got a little token that says breathe on it. And I think any of those would be fine. And I think I'm just going to use this key just because I would like to save this for maybe a different project. So let's put those to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and add my key. How about we do it like this? That way do a little loop-de-loop. Pull this piece through. Make sure that I don't want it to be extremely long. I just want it to hang a little bit down from this when all is said and done. Tighten it up just a tiny bit. Let's see what that looks like. You could really use any type of found items on this project. Before I knot that up, I am going to put just a little spot of glue on here. I want it to get on the, just as I pull this taut. For the top, I am going to pull off maybe 18, 24 inches, and I'm going to cut 2 of those. That's probably longer than what we need, but it gives us some room for error to correct any mistakes. I'm going to add a little hot glue to the base of this. Be very careful to pull those out. And we are going to just put that on the base right here. That glue is just going to give us a little extra support for later. And you want to keep that pretty close. So let's just get that on there really well. I'm going to add just one more dot of glue right here. Set you to the side. Now for the top, we're going to go ahead and put this through here. Say that. Did I leave myself enough room? I may not have left enough room. There we go. So I got it on there. It's a little squirrely, but we got it. We're going to put this on here, and I'm going to go ahead and screw this down just a little bit. Now with these two pieces of cording, I am just making sure they're even. I'm going to do one way, then I'm going to do the other back this direction. So we've got them going opposite directions. I'm going to screw that down really well. There we go. Now I've got all these strands going 4 different ways. So I've pulled that through. These are about even. And I am going to have them coming from 4 different directions. Now I can just bring these up, and whenever I go to hang it, it is going to hang evenly. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to put a knot in this. And then what I do is I use these paper binders to create my end hook. We want to make sure that's as even as possible. And I am going to just go in and add a little bit just for one more decoration. So to do that, I'm going to knot this off. I'm going to do it twice. And I am just going to tie this off to the end so that I have a nice little hook. And this is just a paper binder. That's all it is. It's just a little paper binder. And just to give that a little more security, I am going to just put a drop of glue in different spots around here just to secure it. And we're just going to make a little bow to put at the top, a simple bow, not anything major. Add that onto here just to make it look more finished. So I am going to take this and just hang it up and show you what it looks like after it is in place. All right, and here it is. I think it's so cute, and all from thrifted and recycled items. So you know what? Go get in your garbage can. Just kidding. Just save those cans, save those lids, and just get out there, work with what you've got, and create something fun. Until next time, bye.